Okay, so part two, when a woman stalks a man, legal system, mental illness, spirit children, and hoodoo. So how did all of this start? So first, by profession, I mentioned before, prior to becoming an entrepreneur, I spent over a decade in the field of mental health, but we approached mental health from a cultural perspective. When I was in Chicago, I was with a black agency in Chicago, as well as when I moved to DC a few years back. The agencies that I worked for were black agencies. We had black clients, and the approach to mental health, no matter what we were engaged in, was rooted in what we would call an Afro-Kani, meaning an African or African-centered, Afrocentric, African-centered cultural foundation for the most part. So the reason that I engaged in that field is because it was directly related to what I was doing outside of the regular 9-to-5 during that time period. Since leaving the mental health field, I've become an entrepreneur full time. And some of the things I've done, I've published 31 books on Afro-Kani, meaning African ancestral religion, culture, nation building, language, anthropology, a number of different subjects. It's all about the empowerment of black women, black men, black children, our community, and so forth. People download our 31 books for free, thousands of downloads per month. We have an institution. I've taught 40 online classes on the institution that are archived that people access. So this is how people get in touch with and find out about the work. When I've taught in, lectured in different cities around the country, from the East Coast, West Coast, and all over the past 15 plus years in earnest, as well as internationally, people come out. We have free events. People get a chance to come out and hear the information. We don't charge them to come speak. We give away a free copy of one of our books, so we don't charge people for that. So this is how people became aware of what we're doing online, as well as, the direct access. A few years back, before COVID and before we started teaching the online courses, back in 2014 and 2018, I had a blog talk radio channel, and I had a number of different blog talk radio broadcasts, and we were broadcasting a few times a week. This was online radio and so forth, and people would call in, and we're talking about these subjects and going through the information in the books. So this is how people became aware of what I'm doing. So this is what took place with regard to this individual from the beginning. We have an annual conference, the Echisign Conference, which is Ancestral Religious Reversion. And we talk about the different forms of ancestral religion, Afro-Kani, meaning African ancestral religion, that we preserved in our blood circles when we were forced into the Western Hemisphere over the past 300 plus years during the enslavement era and afterward. We preserved these traditions in our blood circles. We preserved our ancient Afro-Kani, or African ancestral religious practices, whether it's the Hoodoo tradition, which is the Akhan tradition from Ghana and Ivory Coast, the Juju tradition, which is the Yoruba tradition from Southwest Nigeria, the Ewe tradition, which is Voodoo, the Wanga tradition, which is Ovambo, the Ngengan tradition, which is Fang, and so forth. We have scholarship dealing with how we preserved our ritual practices, how we preserved our spirituality, how that made us resilient enough to overcome the enslavement process, freeing ourselves from enslavement people, establishing independent black settlements, escaping from plantations and becoming independent and defending their independent sovereign states. Even while there were plantations still enslaving people, we would escape from the plantation, set up our own independent sovereign state, arm ourselves, go back to the plantation, free more people, bring the people back, and so forth. That was powered by our ancestral religious practices. So these are the things that we talk about. We've published documents, released a couple of documentaries and so forth, where we go into detail about proving the linguistic connection, the cosmological connection, the genetic connection with regard to the human genome and so forth, to these different ethnic groups, and how we preserved our own unique expression of ancestral religion. So we're a unique group of Afro-Kani people, African black people in the Western Hemisphere. We have our own culture, we have our own spiritual expression, we have everything we need to empower ourselves and edify ourselves. So this is what we talk about. So we bring people from different traditions Black people, of course, from different traditions. Some people from the Juju tradition, some from the Voodoo tradition, some from the Hoodoo tradition and so forth, and various others, and sharing that information. Just to give an example, most people don't know that Hoodoo comes from the Akhan term Undu, which means medicine from roots, trees, and plant life. It also means to become heavy with the spirit and to become able to engage in spirit communication and spirit possession and so forth. But Undu came to be pronounced in English as Hoodoo, but it's an Akhan word. When we talk about root workers, whether they're in the Hoodoo tradition, which is Akhan, or the Juju tradition, which is Yoruba, or the Wanga tradition, which is Ovambo and so forth, that is really the foundational basis for what is now called homeopathic medicine in the United States, alternative medicine, natural approaches to medicine, naturopathic medicine, and so forth. We had the knowledge of the medicinal use of thousands of plants and herbs and so forth that we brought with us from the continent, and we continued to heal ourselves. The so-called slave masters would be dependent upon our people to heal our people. They didn't have this medical knowledge of plant life and mineral life and so forth. They were dependent upon us for that kind of healing. So just like even today, when you look at, for example, Beyonce and the whole country music thing and so forth, and it's now forced people to look at the true historical origins, and it turns out, of course, as many people know, Black people are the origin of country music, and the banjo came from West Africa, West Africa. The same is true with a number of different things in our lives. Homeopathic medicine, naturopathic medicine, natural approaches to healing and so forth, holistic health, that entire movement came from those of us who were root workers, doing that kind of work, healing our people, having better results than the conventional medical system as put forward by America. That's just one of the things that we have preserved in our culture. So this is the kind of information we talk about. We publish articles and books, and the people who come forward are authors, authoresses, healers, healeresses, and so forth. We have that kind of, conference every year in March, the Echisai conference annually here in DC. In 2017, the woman who began the stalking process and so forth, this is the first time I met this individual. She showed up at the conference. She attended the conference just like anybody else. I didn't know this individual prior to her attending the conference. She came from the state of Kansas. She sat in the audience just like everybody else. And, we have a number of different people presenting, some on holistic health, some on ritual practices, spirituality, and so forth. And, afterwards, people are standing around talking. Some people are taking pictures. Some people are shopping with the vendors. We always have vendors, dealing with their, shopping their goods and services and so forth. People ask for, they exchange information, network. So once people leave the space, they go back into their respective locales and take that information to empower their community. That's what it's about. It's a free event, family event, and so forth. She was one of the people who attended. She came up to me afterwards and said, "Hey, my name is so-and-so. I'll just call her TL, just using the English initials. My name is TL. I just wanted to say thank you. I appreciate your work. I've downloaded your books and appreciate the work you're doing. I'm from Kansas and so forth." And that's what a number of people do. And I'll show some images from the Echisai conference. You'll see people networking. It's a good event, a family event. That's the first time I saw this individual. That interaction was about less than 2 minutes. The next time I saw this individual was the following year in February of 2018. So first it was March of 2017 at the Echisai conference. About a minute and a half of interaction, and that's it. And then February of 2018 was the next time I saw the individual. We had an event on Edisto Island, South Carolina. This is an annual event. Once again, it's dealing with nation building, manhood and womanhood based on our books, Oberima Afro-Akani Manhood and Obatan Afro-Akani Womanhood, and nation building and community building and so forth. So people come to the event, they sit in the presentations, we have breakout sessions, the women get together, they talk about women's issues and how to empower one another and support one another and so forth. The men get together, we talk about men's issues in the context of, the community as a whole and how to support what we're doing and so forth. Then we come back together and we have joint sessions. People have food and so forth and a number of different things. And then we also go to the ocean and give an ancestral offering at the ocean on Edisto Island. That's a very sacred ancestral space for our people here in North America. So that was the second time I came in contact with this individual. She came to the event just like everybody else. She participated in the workshops and so forth and took notes just like everybody else. We didn't have any personal interaction other than the same thing that anybody else would have. Just light conversation that everybody else has. We never had any personal interaction. So those are the two instances where I have seen this person in person. That's February 2018. Now, over the next few months, again, I have the Blog Talk Radio program. We had a number of different programs during the week. At first, it was Monday through Wednesday. On Wednesday, we had Egua Marketplace, and we would showcase a Black business every week, and we would interview somebody and, just share that information. 2 other shows dealt with spirituality and linguistics and cosmology and history and archaeology and things like that. So sometimes she would call in on the radio and ask a question, just like anybody else. Hey, when you said this in this particular book, what did that mean? I'll respond and say, oh, okay, thanks, and that's it. Sometimes she wouldn't call in, but she did, tune in. She did, during that period, over the next few months, she ordered some books for me. I sent her the books and so forth. One time she said that there was somebody in jail. Do you send books to prison? Because I wanted to ship these books to the prison and so forth. I sent the books to the prison. So it was that kind of thing. And she was trying to get some kind of study group together in the prison. And they were having problems with African religion study groups in the prison. They wouldn't allow them. She said they were discriminating. And she wanted me to sign some document to say that I was the advisor to this African religion study group and all this kind of stuff. I said, no, I'm not going to sign anything. I don't know who these people are. Maybe they are having a study group and so forth. I said, I'll send books just like any publisher will send books, like Amazon or any bookstore will send books to a prison, but I'm not going to sign off on anything. All of a sudden, next thing you know, she said these people lied to her and she's not dealing with them anymore. So I thought that was very strange. And later on, I found out why I knew it was strange. But outside of that interaction, no interaction. So we went from March 2017, saw her for about a minute and a half. February 2018, she came to the event in South Carolina. She participated in workshops and so forth. No personal interaction. Now we're going through the months of 2018, and then we get to August of 2018, and this is where the stalking began. And I'm going to read this email. I'm going to show you this email because this was entered into evidence in the criminal trial. This was entered into evidence in the civil case. And once again, when you download these cases and the information, you will see this email as one of the exhibits. We want to give these details because, it's important to have so-called receipts. Once again, nothing we put forward here is defamatory, neither is it, designed to be disparaging. We're just putting forth the information so you can really understand the gravity of the situation. But this is where the stalking began, the August 28th, 2018 email. So it says compliment assigned by Nyamewa Nyame, and I'm going to read the entire email so you can get a really, detailed understanding of what's taking place. First of all, compliment. And there are certain terms in the Akhan language because we practice Akhan ancestral religion, which is an expression of African ancestral religion, Afro-Akani ancestral religion. And we teach the Akhan language as well as the Medutu, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet and so forth. But you'll see a number of different Akhan terms, utilized in this email and much of the documentation that we put forward. She learned about this information by coming to my website and then began to use the terminology, extensively. So, compliment assigned by Nyamewa Nyame. The reason why she said complement for background, in June of 2018, so I saw her in February 2018. A few months later, one of my Blog Talk Radio broadcasts, I did a broadcast talking about the Ba'iti, which is the origin of the twin flame concept. And this is some of the information that we put forward. The twin flame concept is called Ba'iti in the language of ancient Kemet, so-called Egypt, but our ancestral culture of ancient Kemet, which is, ancient Kemet, Egypt was the black civilization. Europeans and Arabs invaded later, but we established civilization, mathematics, sciences, art, music, and so forth before Europeans existed on Earth. So ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt is a Greek term, but Kemet is the indigenous term of the ancient black people who founded that civilization and started civilization, period. So Ba'iti means the twin, T, Ba'i, which means spirit, but it also means flame. So we show the cosmological origin of the twin flame concept and the soulmate concept coming from the cosmology of our people thousands of years before Europeans existed. And we put that forward because some of our people have been, there's a lot of information about twin flames and runners and all this nonsense online, and it's totally misinformed. The origins of the concept are rooted in our cosmology, and it bears no resemblance to the misinformation that's put forward, for sale on the internet. And sometimes our people get caught up in that. So we were talking about the nature of the twin flame cosmology, the nature of the soulmate concept, linguistically and cosmologically in our culture. We're just talking about it, to reference so people have a better understanding. And the whole notion of how do you find your quote unquote Ba'iti or divine complement, we talked about that just for reference purposes. So she assigned, titled this email, Compliment Assigned by Inyame wa Inyame. Inyame is the word for God in the Akhan language. Inyame wa is the term for goddess or mother. So just like in Akhan, you have the word asase, that's the word for earth in English. So if you say earth in English, that's asase in Akhan. If you say water in English, that's nsio in Akhan. If you say air in English, that's mframa in Akhan. If you say dog in English, that's okramain in Akhan. If you say God in English, you say Inyame in Akhan. That's the great father. But the great mother is Inyame wa. And we always recognize the balance of male and female, no matter what Afro-Akani or African group we're talking about. So she said, compliment assigned by Inyame wa Inyame. She's talking about the divine compliment assigned by, quote unquote, God. So here goes the email, and this is the beginning of the stalking. Nehem, which is my name, Kwesi Nehem Ptah Akhan. She says, prepare for me to ramble. Let me start by saying that I feel like an idiot sending this email because I am extremely shy and abhor rejection when it comes to expressing myself romantically, where to start. Despite being 40 years old, I have never been intimate with, dated, or married a man that I actually liked. From an early age, others convinced me that my expectations were too high, and if I didn't lower them, I would end up alone. The first time I came across the Odwirafo website, and my name is Odwirafo, my title is Odwirafo, and my website is odwirafo.com. So that's what she's talking about. The first time I came across the Odwirafo website, I was on the verge of settling once more. In truth, I knew you were the one the moment I read the first web page upon entering the site, but I refused to believe a man I had never seen or spoken to could be my soulmate. For all I knew, you could have been ugly. But the one thing I did know was that I trusted you so much so that I told my children you were the only man on this planet I trusted, and to call you if anything ever happened to me, even though I didn't have your phone number at the time. Soon I began to be flooded with dreams and messages from Nsamanfo. Nsamanfo is the term for ancestresses and ancestors in the Akhan language. She was flooded with dreams and messages from Nsamanfo saying you were my complement, meaning divine complement or twin flame, one who is incarnated to be with you. I mistook these messages for messages from the enemy because I thought Asona was my matricline. So I fought and fought against the dreams and messages I was receiving, so much so that I began to chastise myself for yearning to be with a relative. Asona is a matriclan in Akhan culture, and that's my matriclan. She heard me say that Asona is my matriclan, so then she started saying she was from the Asona matriclan, and then later on she found out that people from the same matriclan don't mix. That's akin to incest, and she was not aware of that when she began to pretend like she was from the Asona matriclan. So this is what she's referencing. She thought we were spiritually relatives, so she thought that, it was a problem. But the dreams nor the messages stopped. Instead, they became more frequent and more detailed, with the most powerful dream being when I birthed your son, Yao, on last Thursday. I have kept quiet for the most part until now, but my heart aches to be near you. The recent dream of us birthing a son was so real, so emotionally and spiritually binding. My body is still recovering. Last year, you were ill with what was perhaps a cold or allergy of some sort. It lasted for months and my heart ached the entire time. I cried when I listened to one of your live broadcasts because I was not there to attend to you, heal you. In turn, whenever I am sick, thoughts of you heal me, literally. I received a reading from Kalinda less than 3 months ago, but I found it useless in many regards. She said it would be another year before I connected with my complement. She thus encouraged me to date different men and remain celibate until marriage. I did attempt to take her dating advice. I ended up on a date with a guy that repeatedly tried to force himself on me and showed zero respect for my personal boundaries as a whole. No, thank you. I'd rather be alone than settle again. Of course, there's much more I could say, but all in all, I just wanted you to know that I love you, I need you, I pray for you every day, and acknowledge that I was assigned the privilege of being your complement by Inyame wa Inyame, by the divine, by God. Additionally, I would be lying if I said it didn't feel like we were already married. P.S. Ra Nehem, the firelight that rescued me. P.S.S. My apologies if I'm breaking some protocol of silence that I am not aware of. I'm really not sure how this is supposed to work. It's all very new and confusing, and it doesn't help that I wear my heart on my sleeve. Okay, so certain things are very important. I have this in front of me, so I want to reference a couple of things. First, as soon as she logged onto the Odwirafo website, she knew I was the one before she even saw me. She told her children this is the only man on earth that she trusted. There's already some mental imbalance there. And it's important to note that even when she came to the event on Edisto Island, even the sisters and anybody who interacted with her recognized that she was, a very articulate person and, had an extensive vocabulary and so forth, but you could tell she was imbalanced behaviorally. There was some eccentric aspects of her behavior, expressively and so forth. So but hey, it's not against the law to be, a little imbalanced. So, I just want to look at this. So, as soon as she logged onto the site, she knew I was the one. So that's clearly some imbalance. It's also important to note that there was never a time in that first minute and a half that we first met that I showed any interest in her. I was never interested on any level, never have been, never expressed that, and never, did anything to suggest that. Same is true when we saw each other and everybody else at the event on Edisto Island. Never been interested in any way, never expressed that. I've gone around the country, as I said, doing presentations in different cities and so forth for the past 15 plus years. I've never attempted to, develop some relationship with somebody I met at a lecture or reaching out to people on social media. I've been on Facebook for 15 years or more, as well as social media, including Instagram, Twitter, and so forth. We do not utilize that to try to sound deep and then try to talk to women on the side. 99.9% of the individuals who are in the line of work that I am, all over the country. We are focused, we're disciplined. We don't utilize the information that we have to try to get with women. We don't do that. 99.9% don't do that. These are the unsung people who are in the communities, teaching, educating, edifying, empowering, and so forth. And people don't really know who we are unless you're in that, in that vein. So, and when you see, pictures of myself and other people in different, all over the websites and, social media, you see that I'm not hugged up on people. I usually have my hands behind my back when I take a picture in any city. I've been in like 33 plus cities on multiple occasions, as well as internationally. You never see me hugged up with somebody unless there's somebody that I know personally and we're friends and we have a friendly hug and so forth. But outside of that, you never see me, hugged up with somebody who came to my lecture and took a picture about my book and asked me to sign it. We don't do that. We never have. So, and in this case, it's the same way. Never been interested in the person at all. So, now, she starts having these dreams and so forth. She talks about spiritual messages, and, having my child and all these different things. And then at the end, of course, after saying that, thoughts of me healed her literally. And, when I was sick, she cried because she wasn't there to attend me. I've never been sick. That's just not accurate. I don't know what she's referring to. It's a little, extra there, but you can see there's imbalance. At the end, she talks about she's just grateful to know that she was assigned the privilege to be my divine complement. Notice nowhere in the email I have a say about anything. She just wanted to inform me that she is my divine complement, and she's so grateful to know that she's been assigned by the Supreme Being to be with me because she incarnated to be with me, and she just wanted to, inform me of that. I didn't have any input in that at all. She didn't even ask me anything. So now she's talking about spirituality and all of that. So then I respond, and let's look at the response that I get. I say, Michiawo, that means greetings. No protocol broken, so it's no problem. I can tell you from a diviner's perspective and others who have been diviners for years, and diviner means one who performs divination, which simply means a spiritual reading. Diviners for years would say the same. When you are very receptive and receive accurate messages, even to the point where you can assist others with divination and help them realign their lives harmoniously, there are two areas where receptivity can be misread. Love, law relationships, and the word love and law in our ancient languages are the same word, and issues dealing with finances for the individual, but not for those the individual divines for. This is why often for those two areas, even seasoned diviners will go and get divination from another diviner. Every other issue in their lives, no need for seeking out another diviner. The main reason being is an undergirding ehu, which means fear, which is at the root of the subject matter. Fear may be conquered for death, loss, and anything else, yet it can creep in unseen when it comes to relationships and finances. Then it can distort receptivity. I myself have done divination in the past for other diviners because of this, and it is very common. You have to be very focused to recognize when ehu, which means fear, creeps in to distort receptivity in the law, love, and finance areas. In this instance, this is what has happened. I already know who my complement is. So you would have to retrace the lines of how certain messages came to you to be able to pinpoint where the distortion in the receptivity showed up. You are not the only person who misread the same message and believed they were my divine complement. I had to inform one other individual that she was not my divine complement, although she shared detailed reasons and messages she received spiritually that suggested that I was. But again, it is not uncommon. You will find Yoruba priests, priestesses, Akhan priests, priestesses, Vodun priests, priestesses, and others who will share that in these areas, they will often go and get a reading from another priest, priestess themselves, even when they did their own reading on the relationship and received a specific answer or set of answers followed by related spiritual experiences. In fact, it is part of the learning process when confirming spiritual messages. When a message and/or related spiritual experience turns out not to be accurate, the Sankofa process, retracing the lines that got you there, will reveal some point or juncture where things got off course, where ehu or fear crept in, fear of being alone with the wrong individual. When you catch it, then you navigate around that point in the future. So do not feel bad about getting this set of messages wrong. That has happened with myself and everyone else who is receptive or divines at some point. However, your divine complement is out there, surely walking around right now somewhere. He would be in your age range and definitely exists. Maybe it will be next year after September when you find out who he is. These things are learning opportunities, and we have all definitely gone through them. It's a part of the developmental process when you take advantage of it. Okay, so you see what took place. Since she approached the issue from a quote-unquote spiritual perspective and said she had spiritual messages and she was informed and it was a divine revelation and so forth, it wouldn't be enough for me to say, well, I'm not interested, so I appreciate you, but I'm just not the one. Because in the mind of somebody like that, she would go back and simply say, well, he just doesn't understand now, but this was a divine message and he'll come along at some point. Since she talked about, readings and she was inferring divination and so forth, then I had to come to the subject matter and approach it from a diviner's perspective. And she learned about divination and the details of divination and so forth from my website, as well as studying, other things about ancestral religion and so forth. So I want to give some detailed information about how people can get spiritual messages misinterpreted and how very common it is. So I wasn't being disparaging. That's not the goal. I wanted to be, truthful, honest, open, but also direct and just showing the point by point, not only a rebuttal, but something that she can learn from so she wouldn't make the same mistake in the future, but clearly stating the truth and what's obvious. She's not my divine complement and never would be that. And again, that's not being disparaging. That's just, if someone tells me, Kwesi, he's a nice guy, he's intelligent, he has his own business, I appreciate the work he's doing. He's not my type, but he'll find somebody at some point. When someone says that to me, I respect that. I appreciate it because, then I can move on and, connect who I need to connect with, and I don't have to, spend time considering something that's not a reality. And I wouldn't go forward and say, well, yeah, you may feel like that now, but let me show you why you need to be with me. That's not only is it disrespectful, it's immature, it's ignorant, it's imbalanced. Just to give the bottom line, it's imbalanced. If someone tells you you're a nice guy, but you're not my type, they're letting you know how they feel. If you try to move forward and override that, what you're saying is, I don't respect you. I don't care how you feel about yourself. I said I'm your type, so I'm going to force you. I'm going to force myself on you until you acquiesce. That's insane. So normal people don't operate like that. So once again, I'm just showing the information and giving a detailed response. She gave a detailed email, so I gave a detailed response. And the key was the way you misinterpret messages. If you're overcome by ehu or fear, that begins to distort, spiritual messages in many different facets. That's all we wanted to say. So let's look at the response that she gave to my lengthy response. She says, Mirase, which means thank you, Kwesi. Although my misreading the multitude of dreams and messages I have been receiving is as much embarrassing as it is disappointing, your response is beyond helpful. I am grateful. I gathered the courage to message you. It's something I should have done a long time ago. Right offhand, I know that I have reached a point where I do not trust men that express interest in me because I am constantly bombarded with provocateurs sent to distract me. This lack of trust morphed into a full-blown fear about 2 years. She meant 2 years ago. The same time I came across the Odwirafo website. So she's stating that she had a full-blown fear. It was about 2 years ago, and she just happened to come across my website when she was engulfed in this full-blown fear. So now it's making sense to her regarding my explanation about how she misread these messages. She says, yet with that being said, I am committed to remain celibate until marriage and would never intentionally desire someone that is not my true complement. My sincerest apologies and blessings to you and your complement. Merase, which means thank you, and she says sincerely and so forth. And then my response is, Yenyaseda, which in Akhan means you're welcome. You'll find that this happens with at least 90% of people involved in the culture. Is just a learning experience. So that was the exchange. It was a respectful exchange. I didn't want to do anything disparaging or say anything disparaging. Just wanted to give information. Gave the information. Even mentioned how one other individual had similar messages, spiritual messages coming to her. And I explained something similar. The difference with this individual was she was close to like somewhere in her 60s. She admitted that she had a mental illness, that she was diagnosed with a mental illness. She was living in a facility for adults with mental illnesses and so forth. She was receiving, SSI and so forth. So when I explained to her, this is part of the mental illness you're dealing with. Of course, you're an elder, we're not divine compliments. And she recognized that right away, and she didn't bring that back up. So there are only 2 instances where something like this has happened in the past 20 years. 2 people who were both mentally ill, an elderly person and, this individual. And again, I didn't disparage either. So I explained these different things, and she acknowledged it. She acknowledged it, and she apologized, and she even said peace to me and my compliment. So I thought that was a good exchange. I thought it, kind of settled everything. 4 weeks later, she took a bus from the state of Kansas with her 3 sons for 20 hours to Washington, D.C., and showed up on my doorstep.